He's a scholar of the Washington Institute researching U.S. policy options towards Iran and a former member of the White House National Security Council staff during the Reagan administration. First of all, I want to get your thoughts on this horrific development.
Well, Mike, one of the things that President Obama has said is that he's not going to send any more troops. He's not going to engage in mission creep. I think that this kind of horrific killing will bring the idea of mission creep to the front part of the table. I was in Iraq during the time of 2007, 2008, and I went through several checkpoints. And I refused to get out of my car because I didn't want to go through what Danny Pearl got in 2003 in Pakistan and Nick Berg got in 2004 in Iraq, beheading. I was going to, by the way, interview some Iranian dissidents in Iraq with the National Council of Resistance of Iran, a group that stands against both the Al-Qaeda of Iraq that was going on at the time and against the Iranian regime, Mike.
Well, let me talk to you about something that happened earlier this week, and I want to get your thoughts on it. Ali Hashim, an Arab journalist, he's a columnist, wrote this piece on the Islamic State's social media strategy. And he writes, and I think this is pretty interesting, the Islamic State's media strategy through its online social media posts and publications highlights the group's intention to scare all of its enemies, a strategy that aims at defeating the opponent without shooting a bullet. For no one wants to be slaughtered with a sword or a knife while hearing the cheers of dozens or hundreds of extremists. This was written before this happened. Is he nailing it?
Yes. Well, Mike, Al-Qaeda of Iraq beheaded Nick Berg in, I think, 2004. So I think what is happening, that was Abu Musab al-Zarqawi, who got droned, by the way, by the American Air Force. I think what is happening is that Baghdadi, the head of this so-called Islamic State, is taking the play from the playbook of Abu Musab al-Zarqawi.
And so this video does two things, doesn't it? I mean, in one respect, it repulses much of the world, and yet it also galvanized their supporters, the extremists who are the followers.
It's a recruitment video, Mike. One of the things that we learned is that these kinds of horrific images bring people from all over the world to join the Islamic State. I don't want to call them the Islamic State of Iraq and Greater Syria.
Let me ask you about propaganda campaigns like this. I mean, obviously this is an execution, but it is a propaganda tool, as we've just talked about. How do you blunt that if you're Iraq, if you're the United States?
I think that U.S. airstrikes have to continue, not just in support of Americans in Mosul or Americans in Erbil, but also in support of ground forces by the Peshmerga, as well as ground forces of the Iraqi security forces. So you can't back down, President Obama.
I'm going to ask you one final question. What's likely to happen to this other American journalist who's a captive of theirs?
Well, I think he's too valuable to kill now, given the fact that there's been this horrific execution. What I think will happen is some bargaining at this point.
All right, Raymond Tanter, always a delight to have you in on the broadcast. Certainly appreciate you stopping by.